of Elevate, we warmly welcome you to join our community, where our mission is to make work for all. And for almost 3 decades, professional women have been coming to Elevate at all levels of their career to lift each other up and help each other achieve their version, your own version of success. So I'll mention some upcoming Elevate opportunities after our conversation. Who am I? I'm Allie McDonald. I'm a longtime investor and owner in Elevate Network. I'm a former asset management or recovering asset management CEO. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of a 10-year-old boy, Bobby, who just came home from school sick with a headache, unfortunately. I'm a fierce advocate for women and girls. I'm also an investor in women and girls. And I'm a running enthusiast. And those of you that were on last month's roundtable heard me complain about not being as enthusiastic of a runner in this training season because the snow and the cold in Boston has been brutal. It's been quite tough. So that's me. Before I get into the discussion with Jacki and Shubhi, I would like to give a sincere thank you to Harvard Business School Executive Education for sponsoring today's roundtable. Their programs offer world-class learning experience that energizes aspiring and established change makers. For more information, please visit hbs.me/elevate. Beth will put the link in the chat. I feel like I'm a podcast host, like reading my commercials, but really, like, aligned sponsors these days, having sponsors that are so aligned, like Harvard Business School Executive Education, helps us continue to bring you, our members and guests, high quality programming. So we're so thankful at Elevate for the long-term commitment and support of Harvard Business School. A few housekeeping items. I think you're all writing in the chat right now where you're coming from. I would encourage you, if you have questions that come to mind during the conversation, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll get to them after we cover the topics that we have planned to cover during the conversation. If you have resources or other resources that are pertinent to the topic, please feel free to put them in there. But as we know at Elevate, our women are not shy about asking questions in the chat.
Subscribers can binge all episodes.
Or having conversations in the chat, but please no solicitations. And as I mentioned a little earlier, make sure that you're on mute unless you are speaking. That would be great for everyone. Okay, on to our topic today. Women Leading Innovation in AI with Jacki Zehner and Shubhi Rao. Both Jacki and Shubhi have extensive bios that you can read on our website, or you could also look on LinkedIn and feel free to follow them on LinkedIn and follow SheMoney and Uplevyl on LinkedIn. But let me give you first a few highlights. Jacki Zehner. Few things about my friend Jacki. She was the first female named partner who was in the trading department, right, as a trader at Goldman Sachs at the ripe old age of 32. So that's quite impressive. After an obviously successful career there, she decided to spend many years, decades, researching money and wealth and women and wealth management, and since then has used that knowledge to invest in women-led organizations and create organizations such as SheMoney and Women Moving Millions. Many of you here have probably heard of Women Moving Millions. Since Jacki co-founded that organization, they have donated over $1 billion, Jacki, I think, to helping women and girls, organizations that are helping women and girls. So I think if you looked in a dictionary or an encyclopedia, let's use encyclopedia, next to the word invests in women, you'd see a picture of Jacki Zehner there. And for those of you that are younger members here at today's Executive Roundtable, an encyclopedia are these books that you used to open to find information that you now go on to Google and you put the information, or you go onto your favorite search engine and find that information. So you'd see Jacki's picture there. Just being in Jacki's orbit is amazing. You meet amazing people, always trying to help one another, always trying to lift women up. A few things about Jacki is not only is she a great connector, a great investor in women and girls, a Wonder Woman enthusiast. She's an exceptional dancer and loves to dance at any time. And also, if you want to find Jackie in the summer, oftentimes she's in her home country, Canada, on her family's farm picking strawberries. So that's Jackie.
Peaches and cherries, Allie. Got to
Oh,
correct you on that
peaches
one.
and cherries. Sorry, wrong fruit.
Yeah, I know. If you want me to perform my fruit wrap later, as a close to this incredible morning, just let me know.
And we'll welcome you to do that. And Shubhi also has an impressive resume with many firsts. After starting her career as an engineer, which I think is very pertinent to her work today and what we're going to talk about today, she became the first woman and person of color to serve as officer and treasurer at both Alphabet, Google, and the first woman and person of color to serve as assistant treasurer of Ford Europe. And there's many other things there you can read about Shubhi and the many boards she is on. So those of you that are Elevate members looking to be on boards, Shubhi is one of those women who has successfully become a board member on many great boards. But as I complain about the running and the cold temps in Boston here during the winter, I'm reminded that Shubhi is from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where there's an average of 300 inches of snow is that right? 300 inches of snow, Shubhi, every winter. And there's about 5,000 people in her hometown. Another hardship is that she's a Detroit Lions fan, or that was a hardship until recently. Until recently, Shubhi, if I'm getting my NFL football stuff right. But now I see why Shubhi ended up in Austin, Texas, where she founded Uplevyl. So Shubhi and Jackie, either one of you can go first. What we're going to do is we'd love to hear each of your stories, where you came from and tips and tricks along the way for all of us here listening, and how you ended up with Uplevyl.
Well, Shubhi, with your blessing, maybe I'll go first because I feel like I can set you up for this magic that is happening right now. So, Allie, first and foremost, thank you and your team for having me. Elevate goes back to me right from the very beginning when Janet Hansen started 85 Broads, I think over 25 years ago now. So this is very special for me and meaningful. I will always show up for anything Elevate, and especially for Allie and her team and Janet. And thank you all for being here. I thank you for that background. I mean, Goldman a million years ago, I just turned 60. So it's kind of crazy to think that I was almost half my life ago when I made partner at Goldman. But I will say, just from that experience, I know a lot of you are still professional women in the corporate environment. It feels like a lifetime ago, and yet it breaks my heart to see in many ways how little has changed in terms of women's representation and leadership positions, particularly in finance. So that passion for women's inclusion and leadership and power and connecting that power to money and the capital markets and all of that certainly dates back to my days at Goldman. And, in the decades since, as Allie mentioned. So it took a few journeys through philanthropy, mainly thinking that's where rich women play, is get over into the playground of philanthropy. And it's more serious than that. I kind of jest. But frankly, it's interesting because I think if you have a situation, which I did, where you come into wealth, the natural expectation is that you move into philanthropy, and that's what I did, and alongside investing. And it wasn't until many years later that I was like, wait a minute. I love that, and that's important. And it's even more important to, I would say, traverse the space of everything that you can do with your money, investing, earning, obviously, spending as being one of them. And I actually think the most underused tool that we have for social change is the power of our pocketbooks and our ability to spend and earn and invest and align with the vision and our values and what we want to see in the world. So that took me much more back into the space of investing, and I'll bridge it to Shubhi pretty quickly. But as an early stage investor, and I served on tons of boards relating to movement building, the Women's Funding Network being one of them, the national network of women's funds across the country, I always looked for and dreamed of a technology that could support movement building and connection in an authentic, community-centered way. And I will say that Shubhi and I joke sometimes that we wish we would have met 20 years ago where we'd be now. But I had always been looking for a company to invest in that and a founder to invest in that was values aligned, that knew how to build technology and could see the need and the opportunity that comes with the ability to have a technology that is, and you'll hear more from Shubhi, what we're calling female forward, and we'll post a definition of that in the chat so you can love your response to. But I'm an active investor of about 25 direct companies and a number of funds. And as mentioned, I have the company now where I'm sitting, which is SheMoney, and our company that's oriented towards advancing women's financial agency and wellness. But it was sort of in this idea of how to even create scale for what I'm doing, delivering financial education and community to more people than can just physically be in a space. That put my antenna up, and I really believe so wholeheartedly in the power of intention that I really knew that technology and finding a technology partner and investing in a technology company would be so important. And through mutual friends, that's how I met Shubhi almost a year ago. And we'll tell more about the evolution of that. But what I'll just stop there to say, you know, we're living in really crazy times. And especially as women, I don't want to speak for everyone. I should only just speak for myself. But every day I wake up and part of me wants to just climb back in bed. And the other part just wants to put on my kick-ass cowboy boots, which I'm wearing today, and go kick some ass, because, you know, this isn't the time to be quiet or to be silent, but to really understand what's important to us and try to live those values as much as we can. And I'm doing that and being here with you today and showing support with you and for all of you, and in standing beside Allie and my new friend Shubhi with all that she's doing in the world.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you very much. Thank you, Allie, and your team for having us here this morning. Really excited to talk about my favorite topic, as you can imagine. And yeah, you know, it is really interesting, even in this moment, to find myself here with you all and all these incredible women that have joined us, because life is such a fascinating journey. And as I reflect back on my journey, you know, lived in different parts of the world, grew up in different places, although Houghton, Michigan is home. But I think there are certain things I would say are a common denominator all through my life. And maybe there are two key elements, if I can frame it that way. One, you know, as a kid and even today, my love for numbers, I just, you know, that's who I am. That's my sandbox. And not just numbers, but applications of numbers is something that I've always been fascinated with, and I love. And I'm a problem solver, a builder, and so my career really reflects everything that I did, whether it was within the world of finance or in the world of technology, really always bringing those two together. And then the other side of that is risk. And I'll talk a little bit about sort of, you know, how risk played and continues to play through today. So as Jackie said, it also breaks my heart in many ways that I graduated in 1990. And when I graduated, there were only 5 women that graduated out of the computer science engineering program in a class of 132. And of those 5, I was the only American woman. The other 4 were from Korea, half Philippine, half Swiss, and 2 from China, right? So that was my graduating class. And of course, I joined, tech companies from the West Coast, and again, only woman engineer out of the Detroit office, and then went on to go get my MBA, and then that put me a different trajectory, but always straddling finance and technology. But all throughout, I would say, is, and maybe now today is very obvious because of what I do, but as a 22-year-old and subsequent to that, I realized that it was maybe inherent in me to take risks. So I took risks by, you know, whether it was recognizing that I was one of the only few women in many, many, many of my classrooms, but I wasn't going to give up. But it was really taking risk in your, you have to, I think, realize that the world isn't going to do it for you. And to Jackie's point, especially where we find ourselves today, nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do it ourselves, right? And so, you know, when you look at my career, whether it was the automotive industry or later on working for PwC, which is professional services, or Tesco, which is retail. And then, of course, going back to my roots, which is to tech with Google Alphabet. I was really sector agnostic because I always took risk in myself in terms of, what is it that I need to deliver and can I deliver, and just forget the conventional thinking, just do what's really right for me. As long as I was in my sandbox and being able to deliver, what my stakeholders wanted. So, and then when I look back at my then time with Google, especially, was a really interesting time, right? Because I was really like a kid in a candy store for the first few months. Talk about the velocity and the thought leadership and the investments. And because I had the finance side of it, which is I ran $120 billion portfolio in-house, and then other pillars. But I also worked on the technology side, helping more on internal to Google, building tech that we could use. And that's when I started really using a lot of machine learning and AI and data to solve, and these were solutions around how do we do share buyback smartly? How do we look at corporate insurance and use blockchain in a really smart way? How do we look at our fixed income portfolio, et cetera? So lots of different applications. But I also was on the investment side, right? So I could see where we're investing internally on our other bets, internal investments for cloud and Google, and also external investments that we're making in acquisitions. And that's when I could see that this AI train had really left the station. Now, back, in that period of time, most of us didn't think about AI unless you're in the industry. And so today, of course, we all talk about AI. It's become a big part of our vocabulary, but back then it wasn't. And so that was a really defining moment in my life, because I got so deep into data. And I asked a very innocent question one day to a colleague going, where is our gender data? And the response I got back was, well, we really don't need it. And the penny dropped for me. That is right. When you think about an ad engine and how it works and how our algorithms work, you don't need segmentation and cohorts by gender. You're really doing it based on intent to purchase. But that's when I started to think about, but if AI is going to be such a big part of the future, then how is this going to work for women? Recognizing that there's only less than 18% of us that are really pure STEM engineers. And within that, less than 1% of us are really AI practitioners. And so recognizing that, it's only this digital divide this AI divide is going to create a huge digital divide, which will create a huge economic divide. And so complaining about it one day to a friend is where she said, well, you are somebody who can actually fix it, or you can complain about it. And so that's how Uplevyl was born, because I started building out gender data sets, and then an application for the gender data set, and then Up was born after the election. So it was, and all throughout, I've been having to, following my passion, but also taking a huge risk every single time I either change sectors or I change countries, or now as an entrepreneur.
That's great, Shubhi, and we'll have you and Jacki go a little bit deeper into Uplevyl after we get a few more things out of your brain. In further, what I just heard from you and Jacki, there's a couple threads in there. Especially now, no one's going to do it for us, so we have to do it for ourselves, and we have to put our cowgirl boots on and get out there and start getting it done. One thing that gives me hope, though, is, Jacki, I mentioned you're a huge investor in women. I think Janet Hansen is also on the call today. Janet Hansen was the original founder of 85 Broads, which is what Elevate was before we became Elevate, for those of you that are newbies. It was an alumna network of Goldman Sachs, thus the term 85 Broads. That was the location. And Janet, I can't see your face on here. You're not showing up on my 6 pages, but Janet is a believer of and was the starter of this network almost 3 decades ago. And why I'm saying this gives me hope is we have the power in community. We can lift each other up. The government may not want to help us. There are other people that may not want to help us, but we as women together are a huge, powerful cohort. So that's just a little plug for Janet Hansen's idea 30 years ago to bring people like all of us together. So thank you, Janet. The second theme I'm hearing here, Shubhi, is risk. Women being willing to take a risk. I think women have always taken more risk, but we're seen as less or risk averse, more risk averse. So I like that. And then also, Shubhi, what I'm hearing from you as a kind of a tip and trick to our audience is keeping your knowledge sharp, staying ahead of the curve on technology, and that can transcend multiple industries, right? So you haven't put yourself just in one industry and you only knew that, you were able to cross industry. So those are just some of the things that I'm hearing from you both here at the beginning. Now, some of us here are AI novices and don't have the knowledge. I think I saw Krista is on from New York, who's an expert in AI. And there's people on here that have a lot of experience. Some of us have very little. So could you maybe educate the audience on AI and how it works and how it will affect women in the workplace and in leadership roles as you see it going forward?
How much time do we have?
Yeah, I know.
Um,
The Cliff Note version.
yeah, the Cliff version, yes. So, and maybe what I will do is as I answer this is I also want to make sure that I address, because it's really important, what are some of the common myths and what is really real about AI, right? So first and foremost, let me just start out saying that AI is artificial intelligence, and as humans, it is our quest to figure out whether we can replicate our beautiful brains through technology. So we're building, right? It's a combination of a mechanical device in some way. We're using a lot of physics, and we're also using a lot of data science, right? And that's what we're trying to pull together to create this beautiful thing that we have. And so that's really what artificial intelligence is in its simplest form. But the myth out there is that it will replace us as humans, or AI is sentient, or it can feel emotions, or it can generate its own knowledge. That's not the case. And why do I say that? Because as you think about AI as a technology, it starts always with data, right? So we've had robots forever and ever and ever, right, in the world of manufacturing or in healthcare. But how did we train those mechanical devices? It is data. We looked at what a human does, and then we wrote programs, and then we programmed these devices, right? And today, with in the probably what most people think, which again, if there's one thing you all can take away, is generative AI does not equal AI. AI will be $20 trillion, projected to be $20 trillion by 2030. Generative AI is a subcomponent of AI, about $3 trillion. Probably the most pervasive, if you will. It's easy for all of us to use. It feels more tangible, but that's not in the end. And I think, to be honest, we're still trying to figure out what those applications are. So AI it all starts out with the data sets. So let's look at one of the applications of AI, since we all know about it, which is generative AI. So generative AI, how has that particular application of AI being trained is by scraping the internet, taking all these huge data sets and years and years of training those data sets around questions and responses and being able to use that to create what we have now see as our foundational models with ChatGPT and Llama and Gemini, right? Where they're again using all these huge data sets to be able to create a lot of content. That's like a big application, right? But that's about what it can do at this point, which is really use those data sets for predictive analytics. So the where we spend billions of dollars has been, how do you take this data set and teach it to construct sentences? And it's very basic. That's really what we have done, is how do you construct sentences? And that's really what AI is. And will it replace human jobs? Yes, to a certain extent it will, because the way these data sets are generated is based on not just the data on the internet, but if you're a corporate and you have a lot of your own internal data sets where it's wash, rinse, repeat. So if we have jobs that are very process oriented and from A to Z, and you can, for example, let's say a Bloomingdale's and you get calls come in, well, you can go through and track, if A happens in B, B happens in C, or there could be 3 options. But if you can document and you have all that call data, then you can use that as your own knowledge base and be able to train your own, right, generative AI tool, where you're using the computational models from the foundational models, but you're really using that. But once you do that, then you don't need the humans, right? For that, you're going to replace the humans. So coming back to your question around women, they say about 300 million jobs will be lost globally. And that's predominantly is going to hit women, because women tend to be more in those junior roles, tend to be more in those administrative roles, paralegal roles, etc., that really lend themselves to automation. And so this is where I think AI, and we're seeing that, by the way, we as we talk with a lot of enterprises, especially in financial services, is a great example, or insurance, where you have a lot of operations, and that's like the first use case to get automated, and a great way to get easy ROI on AI applications.
Jackie, did you want to add anything?
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
No, I mean, not really. I mean, other than saying, been paying attention to this. I mean, there's sort of what Shubhi sees from an insider and what I see sort of more now working with Shubhi, but certainly as an investor and following VC funding and all of that. This has huge implications because we're already seeing massive, I mean, it's pivoting back a little bit, but especially last year, I mean, companies, I'm in not only my own direct companies, but about 20-ish different funds. And actually just had an AGM for one of my funds on Friday, and had some companies. Every company that's getting funding, it seems, has to have an AI strategy. So it's exciting, and there's a lot of job loss happening over here. But on the plus side of it, there's a lot of new jobs coming because of these startups that are getting funded, and AI agents. And Shubhi explained that to me the other day, because I'm like, I think I want to start an AI agent around fundraising, So you're going to have people innovate, but that's why when it comes to jobs and positioning around how you're thinking about the future, if you're in a big, corporate, this pivoting and risk taking we've been talking about in the chat might be sort of antenna up to pivot into something that is more future forward, that isn't having to reimagine itself with AI, but is creating with AI. Sorry, now there's a blow dryer happening outside, as a partner. So I just think that this is really relevant and gets into how you prepare yourself and upskilling and following the investment trends. And there's a wonderful one. I think it's called Term Sheet. I have all these morning subscriptions, but I always watch every morning what companies are getting funded, and I often click through to look at them. And I think that's a really interesting way to let your imagination go to the positive side of what's happening and being created because of AI, and not just the job loss that's absolutely going to happen on the other side of this.
So I'm starting to see some questions popping up, and I have some questions. Can we do a little bit of a deeper dive into Uplevyl and Up?
Yeah. One thing though,
and-
before Ali, I jump into Uplevyl,
Yep.
and because you have a lot of corporate leaders one thing that I think, as we think about AI specifically, because we're sort of in the middle of the movie, right? So we're going down a certain path, and then boom, AI has come in, and it's starting at the board level, right? Every board in the world is going, what are we doing in terms of our AI investments? And part of that has to do with, well, what is my competition doing? I don't want to be left behind. And if you look at a lot of earnings calls, you're hearing a lot of restructuring, but that's not necessarily related to costs. They're taking those dollars and putting them back into AI, right? So you really can see the rotation of the dollars. And to be senior leaders, where the rubber met the road was, we had to demonstrate financial acumen, strategic acumen, business acumen. Those were really critical, especially as you went senior and if you really also wanted to be on a board. But now I think more and more, even at the board level, there's a lot of conversations happening going, we do need people to be digitally savvy. I mean, AI savvy, digitally savvy, because you're having to make really big decisions and you can't really necessarily get this wrong because AI investments by definition are expensive. And so it's not like, oops, we made this investment and yeah, we can just redo it. It doesn't work like that because AI talent is expensive. Like it starts there. Computational energy is expensive, right? So it is an expensive investment. And so it's not just impacting the board, but it's really impacting people, systems, and processes. Like literally all of those are being re-examined. And so today as leaders, we have to really think about, and let me look at my department. Let me look at all my processes. I may not necessarily just be now being a manager or supervising or a leader to humans, but I may have a combination of automated processes and bots that are part of my team, right? So I really and I think somebody had a question in here. How do you, if you, automate a process, how do you really supervise it? How do you audit it? That's a whole different. So with humans, we have, performance reviews and things like that. Well, what do you do when you're supervising bots and right? So how do you continually to look out to say, okay, what is producing? Does that make sense? So like all of a sudden, you also have to think about performance reviews for that, right? So it's really permeating the entire organization. So no longer is that, oh, that's the IT department and they do something there. It's not that vertical anymore. I think AI is a horizontal across the organization. So you really have to think about your team. What systems are we going to use? Are we going to use internal? Are we going to build it internal? Or am I going to get that external? If I'm going to get that external, there's a great question on, well, how does cybersecurity work for them? And where do they store their data? And do they have the right firewalls? And, which governments have access to all of that data? Like all these things you need to think through. And then, all the processes, is there a better way? It's no longer probably just contained in my department. It probably transcends an entire organization. So there's a lot of different kind of muscle you're using now through that digital lens. So it's like you have to be strategic, business, and financial acumen layered with that digital acumen. And that's not just for today, but you have to keep up with what's happening in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So you have to be really thoughtful about what investment you're going to make now, because more than likely in 5 years, either you need to build it in such a way that you can evolve, or you're going to have to throw it all out the door, and that will not be pretty, right? So you have to think about that as well. Anyway, just wanted to share that.
Well, I just want to add one thing that just looking in the chat too, because I'm an investor partner with Shubhi and a small business owner. And the exciting thing is, and I think we can find this on a personal level too, is that the huge positive is that it can make our lives better, right? If it's built to think about us and work for us, not against us. And even as a small business owner, just this morning, we were talking about this program that's a video editor that you can plug in some raw video and it puts clips together for you and suggests text. So there is a lot of this that is going to create a lot of opportunity for small business in particular to do things that were way too expensive. A press release, PR, video, social media support, all of that. That is really exciting, but it's also like, how do you keep up and how do you know? And that's why coming back to Elevate, the importance of having community and having a place and relationships where you can actually learn from and with each other, whether you're in the corporate sector or a small business owner or just wanting to make your life easier, you know, with all these tools that are now available. I think that's, and having places that you trust that are going to give you good advice on where to spend your time with respect to these tools. And then being mindful that if we put it in one technology, which we have with certain ones, Meta, X, you name it, then the ones that are early, the power that they are going to have over us, as we're seeing now, is palpable. So there's all of this that, again, makes me want to go under, you know, crawl back in the covers if you look at it one way, but on the other side, it's increasingly, you know, up to us and how we want to show up and use these tools and use our money in alignment with what we want to see in the world.
That was great. We have a lot of conversation going on in the chat. Would you like to, and I would love to hear from Dr. Kathleen Showalter. Seems like you have some perspective on this and may want to get in the conversation.
I'm just, as someone who has worked a lot with databases and processes through various moments of, okay, we're moving to digital, okay, we're offshoring, and then seeing companies leap very quickly to make a lot of people redundant because the new solution is wonderful. And now we're going to change all our business processes because we have this tool. And the tool ends up driving the business instead of the business driving the tool. And there's so much data, people are swamped by it. And it's a bit of a Wild West. And I'm seeing, and I actually have myself been laid off as this process happens. Because it's like, oh, we can just ship your job to India because someone else can do it. It doesn't require a brain. It's true, it can be automated, but large language models don't always, every time you put in A, they don't always give you B. You know, it doesn't work like that. And I don't think that there's enough conversation about how we retrain people, how we build in oversight, how we build in risk, how we look at compliance. Like, even if you look at like presidential elections recently, or the, oh my God, I wish I'd never seen it, Elon Musk and Donald Trump toe sucking video. And, you know, people need to know how to look at these things critically. And it's pretty clear we don't all have those skills. And so I don't have any answers, but I guess I do have one thought, and that is that I think that more people who are on the worker or managerial level, who are in the dirt with the processes, need to be in the strategic conversations, not just the operational conversations. And those operational conversations need to be part of the strategy, so that we're not just doing what we do with blockchain and throwing a lot of money at something and then being like, well, okay, that's gone, let's try something else. So I guess I'm interested in businesses actually working more efficiently and people being able to do work that, you know, uses their brains, instead of just everybody making shareholders happier because costs went down, even though 3 years later, you're going to have amortized that capital cost and everything goes to hell, you know? So
yeah,
I'd love to learn more about this process and how people are thinking about some of those negative kind of ideas, because I'm excited about what it can do. I'm just also a little like, hey.
yeah, and there's reason to be concerned. I mean, yes, at this AGM last week, I was sitting beside a guy who had a very big role at the NSF. So just transitioned out and had an insider view on Washington. And I would love to talk about Uplevyl and bring in some of what's happening now in terms of how this is sort of playing out real time, because the fact is, you know, people, especially right now with money and power and technology, I mean, we are living in an autocratic, you know, world where money is power. But when you combine money with technology and controlling algorithms, I mean, we should be getting not violently, I'm not a violent person, but really concerned and upset, about that. And I think there's that, what do we do today that we actually can do, which is be smart about our businesses, upskill ourselves, learn with and from each other, be in community. And a lot of that is place-based. I really believe that, and virtual place-based. But a lot of this too is being, really concerned in policies and practices that are happening at a legislative, at a local level, and et cetera. So there's a lot to have our antenna up around. And Shubhi, maybe if it's okay, sorry, I'm handing it over to Shubhi, Ali, but speak of maybe a little bit to what alarm bells went up for you and what you're most concerned about, with what's happening right now, and also what we can do about it, as consumers, as workers, as people who have money and talent, that we need to figure out what to do with.
Earlier, when you had asked me about AI, and I talked a lot about really the data and understanding the data and how the data is used for training, the other side of that equation is algorithms, right? So somebody has to train those algorithms. And it's actually one of the, I love it. It's like one of my passions in life is to train. It's a lot of fun. But on the other hand, it's also, it can be, if it's not in the right hands, you can do a lot of interesting things with it. And we actually saw this, and we're seeing this. So let's use an ad engine as an example. So if your algorithm, and your singular task as an algorithm is to engage with users to deliver ads. So how is that algorithm being trained? Well, that algorithm is really being trained to extract all of your data, and then it ships it off, gets all this information from different cohorts and segmentation to be able to go, oh, well, okay, so Ali is really big into ABC. And so it's going to continue to pump up that content and ads to be able to attract you, right? But so that's really, in its purest sense, that's what it's supposed to do. But let's say there is an ad, let's just say from a different party, a political party. As the builder of that algorithm, I also can boost it. I can also suppress it. I can completely silence it, right? A great example is if you look at your comments on many of these big social media platforms, and you look at the order of the comments for you versus the order of the comments for me will be very different, because there's a sub algorithm for the comments that is again going to, so, if I'm big into, let's say, racist comments or nasty comment, well, then those are the comments that will be at the top of my feed for my comments versus the others, right? So the precision at which you can really train these algorithms at the various engagements, whether that's notifications, whether that's in the chat, whether that's in comments, whether that's in reposts, it's quite pervasive throughout the platform. We don't recognize when we say it's personalized for me what really personalization means. But when you have that kind of power, can be really used for positive aspect of a society, or what we're seeing today. When I started in this business, it was all about creating amazing products for corporates or more B2B, and then we saw social media in the early 2000s. And today, I think what we're seeing with some of these platforms is how they're being used to amplify messages from a political perspective, to shape society, to create a whole new world order, right? And it's a very, very powerful weapon, actually. And I hate to use the word weapon, but it really is. It's being weaponized, and those algorithms are being weaponized. And we as users have been rewired our brains to do two things. Either you're like a little hamster on the wheel, going crazy, creating content, and followers, or you're just passively consuming, like spending hours just passive. But our brains have been rewired so that you are spending maximum time on those platforms to get the maximum number of eyeballs, which then is what the advertisers need for like daily active users and engagement time, etc. Right? So it's a real vicious cycle that we've found ourselves today.
Yeah, I think that the common thread here is that we're in a period of misinformation, and this is AI is just helping it, aside from obviously the business
But
discussion that we just had.
sorry, but as corporates, right? So we're women in corporates, we are spending dollars on those platforms. So today, my urge to all these women on the platform, sorry, on this webinar would be, these are also things we need to think about. Where are we spending our ad dollars, and how is that working? And is that the best use of our dollars? Or are there other platforms we should be supporting, or, or investing? If your company has its own VC, right? Internal corporate VCs, like really using our voices to ask these kind of questions.
So I'm looking, and we have about 10 minutes left. There's a bunch of questions that keep coming in.
I have a question.
Oh, go on.
Oh, okay. Hi. Yeah, I just want to share my experience. I used to be an internal auditor and a fraud investigator with Capital One. And when I hear about this AI, great, wonderful automation, right? I hope the corporate out there are not just thinking of how they can streamline the process, but they should also make sure there's a control in place, making sure that, hey, all this automation is in the right person. Because if somebody get in their hands in this data, right, and they're not the right person, then it can screw up the whole corporation. That's why when I hear the AI, oh, great, oh my God, I don't know what kind of control that they have in place to make sure that the right person get the right authorization to handle this data or these reports. I think that's important, that each corporation should look into that. Like I said, being in the internal auditor and as a fraud investigator, if that's not in the right hand, let me tell you, it can screw up the whole, company. So I'm just
Very
saying
true.
that.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree with you. Jackie, did you have a point?
Well, and I do think about that. I just heard the guy I went to a fintech conference, the amount, especially as we go away from cash, right? Like increasingly people don't take cash, and the amount of power. I mean, Elon Musk say about X that he wants it to be the everything platform, right?
Yes.
Like it
Oh my
wants to
God. Yes.
incorporate payments and all of this. And I think these, technology platforms, and this was true, I think, Shubhi, and, so much about Google, they have so much money and have so much power. And if they, you combine all of that with how you're starting, and I think acquisitions are really interesting to track in some of these, especially with big tech, 'cause they're also trying to grow. And, how do you grow when you're already revenues or whatever, hundreds of billions of dollars? But there's when you start to have all of this integrated into, especially in fintech is such an interesting sector to watch as it relates. It hasn't been well funded, but as it relates to, some of these other social platforms, in some ways that could be a good thing. But I just, again, I don't want to scare everyone in terms of, the world is watching us. But when you do have these massive integrations and everyone's paying on mobile and is doing everything, with not just with credit cards, but through these payment apps, the amount of data that's creating and who owns it and what they can do with it is, there are agencies, but increasingly, who is oversight, right? Like there's rumors now they're getting rid of the FDIC and all of that. So I think all of this really matters.
Consumer Protection Bureau, they're taking away. That's why I said, oh my God, sometimes I don't want to watch the news, like, yeah. But we have to take care of our own in the system, or making sure that you have all those controls in place. Don't get excited. Oh, automate. Hey, make sure there's this level of the right authorization, the right individual who have access to it.
Thank you, Sylvia. We did have a couple quick questions I wanted to ask Shubhi and Jackie. Karina Sager had a question about creative jobs. Are you on, Karina, still?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Well, I'll say that's a huge risk. I mean, I'm very involved with the Sundance Film Festival historically, and it was just at a convening as it relates to film. So I would be interested in Shubhi's take more from a technical perspective, but I would say even the disruption within the creative communities related to film in particular and streamers, because now you look at how those algorithms, to Shubhi's point, it just becomes more of the same. You know, they're watching what people's watching, how much time, and they create more content related to what are showing up in the algorithms. And if you don't move content into your front page, the most viewed, you know, we're way more likely because of our brains to watch what other people are watching. And so I think it has huge implications, you know, as a funder of films, projects, nothing selling. I think 3 films sold out of the Sundance Film Festival. So at the end of the day, if you look to where his money is going or not going, that's going to give you a lot of answers to what's happening. But I'd be curious about Shubhi's view. But I would say within the film community, it's both at the studio level, you know, the streamers and independent, there's a lot of change happening right now.
Yeah, I think there's 2 really applications of content. The one is what we've traditionally done, and there's billions and billions of tokens of that right now on the internet, is content around advertising, right? So that's what corporates did. They started to pump out a lot of this machine generated content. And I think there's a lot of fatigue on it. And I think even corporates like OpenAI and Google, et cetera, are realizing that we cannot use that content anymore to continue to train our algorithms. And there's just really good technical reasons why you can't do that. On the other hand, though, corporates who do have their own internal content to train their own bespoke applications are going to need very good, high quality content creators. We are a good example of that at Uplevyl, where you cannot just go out and buy gender data. Believe it or not, such a thing does not exist. And so we had to go and build first party gender data. And how do we do that? That is by bringing in probably hundreds of you women that are on this call, where you have all this intelligence and knowledge base, and to be able to extract that knowledge and then create great content out of it to be able to train our algorithms, right? And so that's where I think the world will start to go more from this big buffet of content creation that we saw to highly specialized content across the different applications.
So I'm noticing we're coming up. I think we could have had 2 hours for this conversation. I think there's probably, I'm seeing shaking of heads. Maybe we'll have a follow-on with you both at some point here. There is a question. It starts with that education. How do we get educated to arm ourselves, from Marlene Green. I thought Shubhi and Jacki, you could talk about some of the stuff that Uplevyl's doing to help provide various levels of education and community.
Sure. So if Jillian, you want to drop the link for the accelerator, that would be great. But one of our product lines is the Uplevyl accelerator. And there are lots and lots of, right? Whether you're looking at MIT or you're looking at Coursera, you're looking at LinkedIn, lots of training out there, lots of material out there on getting digital and AI ready. But so much of it, again, the instructors are men. And where you do find the women tend to be more on the AI and ethics. I think that's quite dominated, frankly, by women, which is fantastic. But you really need some of those core technical. And I'm not saying you need to be a coder, but you really need to get some tangible skills to be ready for corporate America in terms of their AI initiatives. And so out of that was born the Uplevyl Accelerator, not really just from the content perspective. There's 8 modules that we have in the accelerator. And it's everything like what is AI, to understanding what is data, what's algorithms, the ethics side of the equation, of course. How do you stay current, and how do you keep track of like the next 5-year roadmap, and what does that really mean, right? So it's really comprehensive, but it's designed very differently through the gender lens. It's designed by Dr. Patricia Green, who is a real leading expert in the world in terms of designing curriculum for women. Like, she's the one who designed the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women's program. because that's her expertise. So she's designed the program that will really resonate for women. And then the other industry practitioners and I really designed the content and the various modalities. It's a 32-week program, but the membership is for a year. And we bring in faculty from academia, from industry, as well as, just really high quality content and resources to support the learnings.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add, I mean, things cost things and things are free, so it comes back to, trying to do what works for you in a way, in a modality that works for you. I would say with, in general, and thank you for sharing, and there is a discount. And again, it's a course like other courses, but what's different if it's designed by women, for women, and anchored in a community. With the Uplevyl course. And I'll just, Allie, thank you for permission to share this. And we're not supposed to be pitching, but we also have to share things that are true when we can get behind them. And it was in December that Shubhi and I gathered here at our office here and said we could not take that. None of us were showing up on social platforms because we were threatened and, it was just toxic. And as of in 2 days, we are formally launching or releasing a press release about Up. Think of it as Twitter or X or Blue Sky, but by women, for women, in a highly protected and safe space. And our goal is to share as much information, get experts on there, share, connect in a very affordable way, so that everyone can have access to the resources they need to thrive in the digital age, and also just in the world. So we're launching that this week. So stay tuned for that. And thank you for giving us an opportunity to share about that, Allie.
Oh, you're very welcome. And Jacki, I consider that those that are familiar with Elevate, we have a lot of partnerships. And what we want to do is bring the best content and quality things, hopefully run by women, to the rest of our network. So I don't see it as a solicitation. I see it as a partnership.
Thank
And
you.
that brings me to one of the questions in the chat was, why are you recording this and how are you going to be using the Zoom? For those of you that have been on the roundtables before, we record them so people who can't come can go back and watch the content, because obviously this is great content. There's also so much in this chat that people probably want to come back and check out and see some of the links here and grab it again. So this is at Elevate Network. We have many different forms of programming, and in our executive roundtables, thank you again to Harvard Business School, our sponsor, Harvard Business School Executive Education, our sponsor. We bring these programs to you live, but also we record them so other members can come back and watch them. To that end, our next month on March 11th, we have 3 amazing women from Diageo. I don't know if you are familiar with the company Diageo, but it's a great alcoholic beverage distributor. I think a very, very large company here in the United States. And we're going to have 3 of their amazing women in discussion on the topic of navigating obstacles, opportunities, and culture. So that one's going to be a great conversation for the next one. And then it looks like we're going to have Jacki and Shubhi back at some point here for another conversation, because I've been seeing a lot of suggestions in the chat. And then lastly, one other thing, because as I saw a lot of head shaking when I said we're trying to find more community. If you have not joined Elevate or an Elevate squad, our squads program is open until March 7th. So please log on and check it out. You can find 8 to 10 other women that you'll be put together with in your career level to have confidential. I'm seeing heads shaking. People have been part of squads before. People love the squad. So please check that out when you can. Lastly, thank you so much, Jacki and Shubhi, for your time. I know Shubhi had to jump. This was amazing, and we look forward to having you back, and all the best wishes with Uplevyl and Up.
Thank you. And I just want to say, Allie, thank you for all you do. And people that are still on the call that can offer and support to, Elevate, but many other funding is disappearing for so many things. And we can all be champions for funding to support things, to make programs accessible. So just, you're not pitching you, but I am, Allie, because we need to continue. So many business models are based on partnerships and sponsorships. So I'm giving a shout out for Elevate, and thank you for having us, Allie.
Thanks, everyone.